Paul Carman back with you once again, this time for episode 4 of Keysound TV. And before we launch into episode 4, can I just thank you sincerely once again for all the comments we've received since the last episode went out. Fingers crossed so far we're getting some lovely positive feedback, which hopefully tells me that we're providing you with the right sort of content. But if any of you have got any suggestions, criticisms or things you'd like us to include in the future, please don't be afraid to get in touch with us. Now, we've had people who've been with us right from the beginning. We've had people who've joined us literally a couple of days or so before I filmed this segment. And rest assured, if you recommend anybody to join us, they will get the links to all the previous episodes so they won't miss out on anything. And what's been really special for me and everybody at Keysound is that people, talking to people and reading your comments, you're having a go at these little hints and tips we're passing on. Now, I understand you're not going to master everything we show you. If you do, wonderful. But don't expect to master every single little thing. But every little extra technique and bit of information about your product that you glean, it will be well worth it at the end of the day. We're really passionate at Keysound about helping you to get the best from the products you've bought. And when I say helping you, we can do so much. We can show you how the product works. We can give you lots of hints and tips on it. We can show you some nice little playing techniques. But you've got to meet us halfway. You've got to do your bit and have a go at these things. Don't take a defeatist attitude. I promise you, work at things and it will happen. And most importantly, it'll be well worth it. So, episode 4, we've got another packed hour or so for you. This month, we've got the welcome return of Andy Carvill. Andy's a really genuinely nice guy. And he popped by the other day and actually was kind enough to record 3 or 4 episodes worth in one go for us. And I'd like to thank Andy personally and on behalf of Keysound for giving up his time to come and do these things for us. Andy's got a lot of experience, and what he's going to pass on to you this time, now don't switch off at this point, Andy's going to talk to you about scales. Now, you mentioned scales, and that brings fear into lots and lots of people, myself included, because we remember the days when you learnt to play the piano and all you ever seemed to do was scales. One hand up and down and then 2 hands. And it was the reason why many people, particularly as youngsters, gave up playing the piano, because in reality, they never actually played the piano. They never actually got around to playing music. It was just all scales, and the odd bit of music they did play, they'd never heard of anyway. Music and tuition in general has changed so much over the recent years. And what Andy wants to get across to you is he's not expecting you to sit there and start practicing your scales. What he's asking you to do is to understand how a scale is formed. There's formulas you can follow that enable you to work out any scale that you want to. Why would you want to do that? Well, I'll tell you why, and you'll see this over the coming months. Your knowledge of how to work a scale out would in turn enable you to work out any chord. You know, we all come across chords that we don't know. You can work them out. How many times have people come up to me and said, Paul, how do you do the little twiddly bits, they call it? They're talking about improvisation, you know, where you go a little bit off-piste on a piece of music. All that is, you need that knowledge of those scales to be able to understand what notes to go off and play and what notes will work and which won't work. So watch Andy's thing and give it a try. And my tip to you is try and learn a little bit of something each day. And if you do that, suddenly, before you realise it, you're starting to absorb and learn lots of new techniques. So that's Andy's bit that's coming up later. We've also got the welcome return of Mike Hall. We missed Mike last month because he had, what was it he said to me? He was otherwise engaged. Actually, I'll tell you the truth, he was sunning it up in a cottage in Norfolk somewhere, but we don't talk about that. But yes, he was otherwise engaged. But no, It's great to have Mike back with us. And again, Mike made his trip over from his house just the other side of Peterborough, about an hour or so away from me. And he was again kind enough to record 3 or 4 episodes. So we've got all that in the can. This month we're putting out a little piece of music that he's put together, a little arrangement of a piece called In a Little Spanish Town, and he'll include one of his famous Mike Hall stories. Yeah, I've heard a few Mike Hall stories over the years, believe me, but I'll say no more about that at this point. But joking aside, Mike's going to tell you what inspired him to play that piece of music and how he came about setting it up on his trusty Korg PA1000. You'll have myself to put up with as I give you 1 or 2 nice little hints and tips on the Yamaha Genos. I've picked a couple of things this month that I think maybe a lot of people don't know about, and those that do know about it, hopefully I'll open up a few new little features for you as well. I've also included a little hint and tip that you can try on any keyboard, although I'll be using the Genos. And I thought it'd be nice to just do a little performance on the Genos, and purposely I've kept it as simple as I possibly can. I wanted to show you how effective it can be if you play in a really simple way, but play it nicely and use the right sounds in the right way. I'm also going to show you a nice little ending, and we'll try and sort of feature some of the tips we've showed you in the previous episodes. I've done a nice little arrangement of the Moody Blues Nights in White Satin, and I'll play that on the Korg PA4X. And finally, as promised last month, we'll give you a little preview of some amazing, and they really are amazing, headphones from Korg. So lots to pack into the next hour. So all that remains for me to do is to say, sit back, relax, help yourself to a cup of tea, cup of coffee, or something stronger if you wish. And please enjoy the next hour in the company of ourselves at Keysound TV.
Well, thank you, Paul, for that very nice introduction, and it's my pleasure to be back here again at Keysound TV. It's great to be back. What we're doing this time is some slightly different videos aimed at more musical theory rather than about specific products. So yes, I'm here using the Korg PA1000 today, my trusty PA1000, but these theories apply to any keyboard instrument. And the first thing we're going to talk about today is scales. Now, scales, probably for many people, bring fear when you think of piano scales. You have this visualization of a child somewhere playing for hours, just running up and down boring scales. And we're going to take a different slant on scales today. Scales are good for you because you can learn different key signatures and you can learn some dexterity with your hands and proper fingering. But we're going to look at a different aspect of scales where scales can be really useful. But the first thing we're going to do is learn how we can work out any major scale. There are 12 major scales altogether. And the first one we're going to have a look at is one you probably already know, and that is the scale of C major. Now, C major is unusual in scales because it only involves white notes on the keyboard. So let's just play it, because you probably know this scale already. It always starts on C, and then it's just white notes up to the next C. So we go C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. But there is actually a formula where you can work out any major scale. And this is how it works. The first thing we need to take a look at is something called tones and semitones. You may be familiar with this concept, but if not, here's a very brief rundown. Tones and semitones is simply the travelling between notes, moving between notes. So if I just press the note of G here and I go up a semitone, I'm going to be moving to the right, but I'm going to be going to the next adjacent note to that G. So in other words, the next adjacent note is that black note there. Technically a G sharp or indeed an A flat, depending on which way you want to look at it. But that movement is going up a semitone. If I go up another semitone, I go to the next adjacent note, which is A. You're getting the drift of this, I'm sure. If I go up another semitone, I finish up there, and another semitone, I finish up on the B. I've done this on purpose because between B and C, there is a difference. There's no black note in there. So actually moving from the note of B to the note of C is also a semitone. So if I just move up the keyboard using every note, each one of those steps is a semitone. Now a tone is quite simple. A tone is two semitones. So again, let me start on G and let me go two semitones. 1, 2. That is a tone. Now, just to be clear, when these strange little bits between the notes of B and C, and of course it's the same between the notes of E and F. If I'm on B and I want to go up a tone, exactly the same theory applies. So I'll go from B, there's a semitone, there's another semitone, so that is a tone. That distance from B to C sharp is a tone. And also, if I want to go up from a tone from that note, I've got to go to the next black note because semitone, another semitone, so that distance is a tone. Now, this may sound very technical, but this is the secret to working out any major scale. Let me give you the formula now. This is really important. So we're going to play the scale of C again, but this time I'm going to point out the distances between each note. You always start on the root note. So if we're working on the scale of C, your first note, the root note, is C. There we are. There we have it. And I'm now going to go up a tone and another tone and a semitone. Tone, 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 semitone. I'll just do that again very quickly. Root note, tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. Now, you'll be sitting at home thinking, well, that's fine. He's just made that fit a C scale, those steps. Actually, no, it now works. The same formula works for every major scale. So let's start on a D note. So we're working out the scale of D major and apply the same formula yet again. So D will be our first note because we're working on D scale. Tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. Now that's a little bit harder only because you have some different steps involving two black notes. And indeed, the key of D major has two sharps. It's an F sharp and a C sharp. I happen to know that. But let's just see how we did it again. Root note, tone, tone, there's our first sharp, F, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. Let's take a even more difficult example. Only difficult because the steps involve more black notes. Let's work out the scale of D flat. Crikey, that's not easy. So let's start with a D flat and we'll go up a tone, 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 semitone, tone, 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 semitone. Do that again. Root note, tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. So we can now take this formula, root note, 2 tones, semitone, 3 tones, semitone, and work out any major scale. Now you may say, so what? Well, actually knowing your major scales is a really useful thing to know, because you can work out any chords from the major scales, and you can also learn what we call scale chords. So in our next video, we're going to be looking at how we can use this information to actually work out scale chords and even begin to compose your own pieces of music. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that information is useful to you, and I'm going to hand back to Paul now. Thank you very much.
You know, it's always difficult to think of different songs, but with something like In a Little Spanish Town, I could tell you a little story actually, because with a song like that, I remember years ago I used to play that kind of number, and that number often at like dinner dances, when they would say, I know you're doing the dance and you're playing all the music, but could you just do a bit of before the actual dance takes place? And that was the sort of number that I used to play, and you'd think of organ sounds and perhaps a vibraphone. Now, as technology's moved on with something like the Korg, and this is what I just love about this, it gives you the ability to be able to get such realism that we could never do many years ago, and that's the great thing about it. And sometimes I'll start with a completely blank canvas, another time I'll sit down at the keyboard and I'll think, what direction am I going to go in today? And as long as it puts a smile on my face, then I'm happy. Now, these days, I don't have to go out, indeed I don't go out in the way that we used to do, doing hundreds of miles every week. I can enjoy myself now. It's more of a hobby. And that's the great thing about the Korg, in that I don't know any other instrument throughout my life that after over 12 months of use, when I turn it on, I still really look forward to trying different things. And with a song like In a Little Spanish Town, what I've done is to add to the first sound, number one, you'll see I've got piano, strings, and there's some voices in there. And that builds in then on the second part, where I've got a clarinet, just a solo clarinet. You don't have to spend ages thinking, well, what instrument? If it sounds right, then it is right. It's as simple as that. Don't let anybody say, you've got to do it like this. You don't have to do, as long as you're happy with it. Now, on the third one, I've got the marimba with a synthy kind of sound. It's just that lovely sort of bell vibe, that sort of thing. And then finally, I've got a band, which back to those days with the dinner dances, you'd perhaps have a, I don't know, saxophone or a big band sound with that kind of sound that we had with the organs of those days. And today, we've got such realism that we've got a complete saxophone section, and that just blows me away. So when I think of all the things that we can do, and to do it so easily by utilising 4 different banks of sounds that I can make up ever so easy, and that's the thing. It doesn't have to be complicated. It can be as simple or as complicated as you want to make it. And that's the great thing about the Korg.
Well, as promised this month, we're going to have a little preview here of these brand new headphones. They're called the Korg NC-1Q noise cancelling headphones, and they have a smart noise cancelling technology, and I'm going to explain that to you as we go through. I'm going to start by telling you the price. These retail at £299. Now, I've paused for a second there just to give you a chance to pick yourself up off the floor. But let me tell you, that's not expensive. For what these actually offer, that is great value for money. The problem is, it's like I said to you last month, we all get used to buying a 15, 20, 25 pound set of headphones. They don't do your keyboards justice by any stretch of the imagination. We talked last month about the Roland headphones at £85, and I'm pleased to say one or two of you have invested in those, and the feedback is that, yeah, you can really, really tell the difference. So let me tell you, when you step up to this type of quality, it's unbelievable. And these, without a shadow of a doubt, are the finest headphones I have ever tried. Now, you're going to have to trust me on that because, as I said last month, how can I show you the quality of a headphone on a video? But if you do trust what I'm saying, these are unbelievable. First of all, the sound quality. I've never heard sound reproduction through a set of headphones like I've heard through these. And I've never, ever worn such comfortable headphones. And the reason is that I found out with a little bit of research, these ear cushions here and the top headpiece arch that goes over the top, they contain very high quality memory foam, and believe me, when they're on, you realise why then they're so comfortable. And the memory foam helps them to mould perfectly to the side of your face and round your ear, because these have a noise cancelling mode on. So obviously that lovely snug fit, the way it moulds round, is really important where that's concerned. Now, this white pair is our demonstration pair. At Keysound, we supply them in a black finish. They look stunning. This is the box that they come in. I'm sure you've looked already and thought, do you know what, there's no cable on those, they must be wireless. Yes, you're correct, they're Bluetooth headphones. But here's the thing, no keyboard or piano uses Bluetooth to power or utilise headphones. And the reason is that with Bluetooth, there is a very slight delay. You're not going to notice it if you sit with these watching your television or whatever, but playing an instrument where you're physically striking a note, you only need a split second of a delay and you'll notice it. But the reason I'm going on about these is because they can be corded as well. And in the box, as standard, comes the cable that you plug in. They don't become an ordinary set of corded headphones. They are an extraordinary set of corded headphones. As I said, the sound quality is quite unbelievable, and they have various sound enhancement modes on them as well. But here's the thing, they can be open or closed headphones. Now, by that, what I mean is you can either choose to hear what's going on in the surroundings, or you can put them into noise cancelling mode, where literally you will be in a world of your own on these. So let me give you a couple of scenarios. Your instrument might be in the same room as the television. Somebody might want to be watching Coronation Street at quite a high volume. You're trying to practice your keyboard or your piano. And of course you can hear all the commotion that's going on in the Rover's Return whilst you're playing the piano. It's not ideal, I understand that. But if you put these into noise cancelling mode, it doesn't matter what breaks out in the soap opera or the documentary they're watching, you won't hear a thing. And that can be quite useful in some respects. Apparently, I was unaware of this, of course, but apparently while I was trying them out on my keyboard the other day, my wife was shouting me to come and help with the washing up. But it was such a shame because I had them in noise cancelling mode, and I unfortunately I didn't hear her at all. But No, I'm joking. But that's the sort of scenario I'm talking about. You can use these not just on your keyboard or your piano, but as I said, if your television's Bluetooth, say you want to watch television without, maybe late at night in bed without disturbing anybody else, use these as Bluetooth headphones. You can use them on a hi-fi. My particular hi-fi's got Bluetooth on, and I will tell you, I've never heard my hi-fi sound so good as the reproduction I got through these. I can use them with my phone. So I can stream music, I can even make a phone call using these. But another great feature, if I was streaming music from my phone through to here and I take these headphones off, the music on the phone will pause. Unbelievable. Now, when they're in noise cancelling mode, let me give you another scenario. This time my wife comes in and she's offering me a nice cold beer or a cream cake or something really, really nice. I can see her lips moving at this point, but I can't hear what she wants to say. So all I do is literally tap the side of the headphones. It will then either access one ear or both sides, depending which mode you come in, you put it into then, and I'll be able to hear what she's saying. Simple tap, and I can go back into noise cancelling mode. That is an amazing feature. I'm going to just put these on for a second just to illustrate it, but I really don't want to spoil my hair. It's taken me hours to get it to look like this, and if you believe that, you'll believe anything. It's great, absolutely great. So if I was in noise cancelling mode, I would literally be in a world of my own now. Somebody's trying to speak to me, simple tap on the side, and I can hear what they're saying. Tap again, and I'm back into noise cancelling mode. Absolutely superb. And all I can say is, and Steve at the shop doesn't know this yet, but this demo set won't be winging its way back to the shop that quickly, I don't think. Yes, brilliant. I will just tell you briefly how this noise cancelling bit works. There are little tiny microphones, both on the outside and on the inner bit. And what it does, it analyses the frequencies of the sound going on around you and actually uses those frequencies to combat that sound. So it matches those frequencies to cancel them out. And that's why you can't hear anything else. The noise cancelling on this is superior to any others I've tried. And believe it or not, I've tried things like Bose and some of the Sennheiser ones, which are also this price, and in some cases more than this price. I don't think they do the job as well as these do. All I can say is, if you want more information on them, give us a ring at the shop. We're happy to talk to you about them. If you are at the festival up and coming, we will have these with us, and try them for yourself, because you will be as blown away as I am with them. So there you go, little preview of the Korg NC-1Q Headphones. Well, welcome to this first little tip on the Genos. I'm going to give you one or two tips this month on the Genos. They're things that I think quite a few people won't know about, and even those that do know about a little bit about what they do might find it interesting to have a complete breakdown of how they actually work. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about, and I think this is a really, really exciting feature that's come along on latter day Yamaha products, and that's the ensemble voices. Now, they're a little bit different to standard voices. If we go into the Genos here and we look at our home screen, that's what I call the home screen. We can see, just like on the Korg, we've got three upper voices, right one, right two, right three, and we also have a dedicated left-hand voice as well. And if you can see them along that middle rectangle of the screen there. And if you were to press any one of the little square boxes, so I'm going to press right one, that then brings us up. Down the left-hand side of the screen, we can see all the different groups or categories of sound. We're familiar with all of them: piano, organ, we've got strings, we've got woodwind, we've got guitars, so on and so forth. And over towards the right hand 2/3 of the screen, we can see the list of sounds, and obviously we've got multiple pages. But there's a little section down at the bottom that gets overlooked. It's called Ensemble. And if we look at Ensemble, we then get things like pop section, we get ballad horns, we get ballroom saxes, we get Miller time. The one I'm going to look at today is on page 3, and it's called Big Band Saxes. Now, how does this differ from the other sounds? Well, let me show you, because if I now press exit and I now look at that section where it shows the sound, something really interesting's happened. No longer have we got 4 little squares, we've got one long rectangle. And instead of saying right 1, right 2, right 3 and left, it now says part 1, part 2, part 3 and part 4. And what's really interesting, and this is the only section of sounds where this happens, all of the part buttons are now lit. And what's really amazing is that the left voice now actually becomes a right hand voice, and I'll go on to explain that now. So this is all about having 4-part harmony with your right hand, and to do that and to achieve that, they've pinched the left voice and made it a right voice, and that left voice actually becomes part 1, right 1 becomes part 2, right 2 becomes part 3, and right 3 becomes part 4. Now, I said these voices differ. If I just play a single note, nothing exciting there. All 4 parts are just playing that one note of C. And if I was to play an octave lower, I can sort of hear the different sounds, but they're all effectively playing the same note. Now, just think big band, think orchestra for a second. When you have saxophones, trumpets, trombones, all the different sections of a big band, they're not all blowing the same note at the same time. They all, maybe the alto saxes will play one note, the tenor saxes will play another note, trumpets will play another note, trombones another note, and so on. What they're actually doing, they're playing in harmony with each other. Think of it in terms of keyboards, they're actually playing a chord. Now, let's swap to this camera because you can see me better here. When you play a chord on your keyboard, you're actually playing a harmony, a 3 or a 4 note harmony, assuming you play standard chords. And that's what a band, that's what an orchestra does. They create a harmony, and that's what gives you that really big sound rather than just a single note coming out. So, how can we see what's going on here? Well, up in the top right hand corner of that rectangle where we can see the different parts, there's a little image of like a mixer with some sliders on it. If we press that, the screen now totally changes to something you may not have seen before. You've now got 4 keyboards stacked on top of one another. The top one says part 1, top one says part 2, part 3 and part 4. And graphically, that will show you the harmony that you're producing. Now, as I said, if I just play a single note of C, what you can actually see now on the screen is we get a vertical sort of orange line, but it's showing that all the parts are playing that one note of C. So as I said earlier, nothing special going on so far. But what if I was to play 2 notes? Let's play a C and an E. Now I can see that part 1 and part 3 are playing the top note, which is the E, and part 2 and part 4 are playing the bottom note, the root note, which is the C. So all of a sudden now, we've got saxophones in harmony with each other. If we were to add a 3rd note, now what's happening is part 1 is playing the top note, part 2 is playing the E, part 3 is playing the E as well. If we were to add a fourth note. Part 1 is playing this top C. Part 2 is playing the G. Part 3 is playing the E. And part 4 is still playing that bass, that root note. So now we've got a true 4-part big band sax harmony. Now, this will work at providing you're giving it 3, 4, well, you get away with 2 notes, but to hear the full effect, you need to be playing chords. So, I know what you're going to say. Well, that's all right for you, Paul, because you can play block chords. I can only play single notes. Well, fear not, because this also has its own harmony system. Now, we talk about harmony over here. You're probably familiar with duet, trio, block chord, 4-way jazz harmony. But that's still based on that single note. What happens is each voice you use is playing every note of that harmony. What's different on here, if we switch the harmony on, is that each sound is still playing a different note. So you're actually getting true separation of harmony. So just as an example, if I was just to hold a chord here, and I've now got the harmony button on, and it says at the bottom of the screen we're using 4-way closed harmony. If you were to tap where the type is, you can see different types of harmonies. There's not as many as there are in the standard keyboard harmony, because these are true band, orchestral and vocal harmonies. So there's less of them, but they work in the same way. So I'm going to hold an F major 7 chord here, and I'm going to play a little bit of something. Now, hopefully you can hear that separation in the voice. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But graphically, as I was playing that, I could see that each part was playing a different note of all the harmonies that we went through. And that's the big difference. Now, we've got some other controls here. If I was to go to pan and volume, now graphically I can see a representation of all the instruments for the 4 parts. And if I wanted to change one of those saxes for a different sax, I just tap on the sound and choose the different sax as before. We've got volume controls. Now that's going to be important, because what you want actually is the part 1 will always be that top note, or the melody note, if you like. So whether you're playing the chords manually or you're generating it with the auto harmony, part 1 is that melody note of the song. Now, what you may want the volume of that just a little bit louder than the other parts, so you have the harmony a little bit in the background. So you can do that. You've also got pan. What does pan mean? Well, again, think real world, big band or an orchestra. They tend to sit spread across the stage, normally in a semicircle. So each section of sound is not coming from a constant direction. They're coming from different directions. And this is where pan is useful. And you may be saying to yourself, do you know what, I can't be bothered to do all this. But if I can be a little bit brutal with you, that, you know, so many times people sort of say, oh, it's all right for professionals, you know, because they get such amazing sounds and it doesn't sound like that when I play it. Part of the reason is we're prepared to sit and use these facilities that the instrument gives you. And often it's the difference between it being a good sound and a really brilliant sound. If you just spend that little bit of time and spread those sounds out, you will hear it through the speaker system. And most keyboards have this feature, but when you're splitting the harmony up, it's even more important. The next section down is tuning, octave, reverb depth and vibrato sensitivity. Let's just go through them quickly. Tuning. When you put 4 instruments together, the chances of them being absolutely spot on tune is fairly remote, and it would sound unreal if they were. So what you can do, just by slight increments, we're not talking semitones here, we're talking a minute fraction of a semitone, you can just slightly detune a couple of the voices and it will give it that real feel to it. Octave speaks for itself. If you want to drop one of the harmonies down an octave, you can do. Reverb depth, you've got individual reverb or ambience control over every single sound. And the same with the vibrato. You can adjust the vibrato because, again, think of 4 guys all blowing a saxophone. There is no way on earth they're all going to come up with exactly the same frequency of vibrato. So you need to vary that up. And again, it adds to that realism. The last section has a thing called, well, it's labelled as humanise. Well, what does humanise mean? It's some of the things we've been talking about, and one of them is the timing. Again, take multiple musicians and they're reading a score. You know, sometimes you'll hear people say, oh, it's a really tight band. That means that everyone in that band is, to the human ear, listening in a live situation, they're all absolutely bang on the beat. But in reality, they're not all bang on the beat. And again, you can just offset the timing of some of the instruments. It really is a fabulous feature. And within these ensemble sounds, we've got saxes, we've got bands, we've got string orchestras, got some beautiful vocal harmonies. So you can have like a 4-part choral harmony, absolutely superb for sort of classical music, Christmas music, that type of thing. I'm just going to continue the theme of our big band saxes. Just going to get the keyboard set and we're just going to give you a little example of how this harmony works and see what you think. I think it's an amazing feature on the Yamaha Genos. Ensemble voices. So yeah, here we go. Here's our little example. This will only be a sort of short part of the piece, and I'm going to keep it on the same sound all the way through because I want you to listen carefully to that real, true separation of sound. So we've got our big band saxes selected. I'm going to go into the style section and I'm going to go to jazz and I'm going to choose one. It's on the first page, called Big Band Crooner. I don't want the tempo that's given to me, so I'm going to tap. The way I tend to do it is tap the tempo and then turn the wheel. I'm going to take this down to about 130 and we're ready to go. Hope you enjoy this, a little bit of sunny side of the street. Okay, here's the next little tip for you, and this is more of a general music tip. So although I'm doing it on the Genos here, you can do it on any of your keyboards. When I did that little snippet of Sunny Side of the Street, at the end I purposely put a little ending. I call it a false ending because you think it's finished and then it goes round once more for the last couple of bars. It's something you will have heard time and time again. Probably without realising it, but I will attempt now to show you how it actually works. So let's take a little piece like All of Me. We get to the end. Now we're on a D7, G7, and there's our last note, C. Now if we want to just expand that ending, come down in semitones, and then when you hit the A, go to A7. And then play the last 2 bars again. So let's do that without me stopping and talking. So listen, when I hit the last C, we drop down to B, B flat, and as we hit the A, that's when you go to an A7 chord. Sounds like this. I'm sure you've heard that many, many times. I'm doing it without any rhythm or anything. It can be a lot more effective than that. And actually, you could repeat that twice if you want. So you could do sort of 2 false endings, if that makes sense. It's a nice little touch, and it saves you just immediately ending on that sort of root note. Now, I'm doing it in C to keep it simple. The same rule would apply. Basically, whatever note you drop down to, so in that case, our finishing note was the C, and we came down 3 semitones, and we ended up on an A. And if you make the 7th of that note, so in other words, the chord we want is an A 7th, then it will work. If we finished on F, we come down our 3 semitones. This time we're going to finish on a D, so we're going to need a D7. It's a great little ending. So what I'm going to do is do a little setup on the fly here with you, and we'll use it in a piece. I'm also going to try and use the pitch bend that we used, or taught you how to use last month. So that's going to come back to haunt you, because I'm going to make sure you use this thing by hook or by crook. So I'm going to show you another little example of that there. I'm also going to include the use on the Yamaha of one of the super articulation buttons. Now, I know that on this particular rhythm, acoustic jazz, which I've chosen, in B on the 1-touch settings, got a lovely super articulated clarinet. Super articulation just means you're able to put all those little nuances in that a clarinet player or a guitar player or a string player can do that a keyboard player can't really successfully. So we use a little bit of automation to do it for us. So I'm going to use super articulation too, because I particularly like this. Have a listen to the effect. So we're playing away. Now again, it's a bit like that pitch bend where I said before, you bend the pitch bend, or you move the pitch bend before you actually strike the note. Here, just hit the super articulation button. Definitely got the wrong teeth in here. The super articulation button just before you strike the note, and you get, in the case of this clarinet, you get that lovely little glissando up to the note. So if we were to do something like, great effect. And again, we're talking about this a lot tonight. This is introducing more and more realism to your playing. And you know, we've said it before, you need to practice these things, but it really is worth it at the end of the day. So I'm going to use acoustic jazz. I've put OTS link on, which makes my life easy. It just means as I build up through the rhythm variations, it will automatically go through the 4 1-touch settings for me. So you're going to hear examples of pitch bend, super articulation, and our little false ending at the end. It goes like this. There you go, give it a go. I promise you it's worthwhile. Okay, so final little tip for this month on the Genos. How many times do you get your book out or you got your iPad with your piece of music and you know 95 or more % of the chords, but you always come across a few that you're not quite sure of, and you think, oh, I'll just bluff my way through that, we'll skip that one, or oh yeah, it says G major 7th, but I'll just play a G. We've all been in that situation, so that's not a criticism, that's just a fact. We all sort of look at a piece of music we're playing our way through, and you'll occasionally come across that chord that you either can't remember or you just don't know in the first place. Now, if you're watching Andy's tuition, over the period of the next few months, you will learn how to work your own chords out. And believe me, anything that you work out for yourself, you tend to remember better. But in the meantime, if you come across a chord, there is a great little feature here on the Genos called Chord Tutor. And to access it, we press the menu button and it's in menu 2. We've got 2 menus. Menu 2, or page 2 if you want to call it that, there is our chord tutor, and we press it, and this enables us to find out the notes in any chord. Well, I say any chord, the bulk of the chords we're all going to come up against in the run-of-the-mill keyboard or organ type books. Now, let's, for example, we're playing away and we're not quite sure what, I don't know, let's pick a chord here. Let's go to F, and I need to know what F augmented is. Now, because I've watched Andy's tuition, I know that an augmented chord is the major chord with the 5th note. Not the, I don't mean you play 5 notes, the 5th note of that scale raised a semitone. And you will learn that if you watch Andy. But in the meantime, I've pressed F as my root note, and the type of chord I've pressed augmented. And lo and behold, on the little keyboard, it now gives me a picture. And if I play those notes, I'm taking the keyboard's word for it, that's right. But how do you check? You press exit until you get back to your main screen, and there it is down in the corner. It clearly says F augmented. So yeah, this is great. We're on the right lines with that one. Let's pick another chord. Let's go G major 7. So we'll go to G. Now, major is depicted with a big M, and minor is depicted with a small m. So I'm going to go G major 7, and I can see now it's a G chord with an F sharp stuck at the top there. So I now know G major 7. If you needed to, make a little note on your music that that is G major 7. Let's think of a different one. Let's go to E minor 7 with a flattened 5th. Now, I happen to know that chord, but again, we can see it shows us it's an E minor, but the 5th note of that scale of E minor is flattened. There you go. And again, the double check is to exit back to your main screen, play those notes, and yes, it shows we're playing E minor 7 with a flattened 5th. There are loads and loads of chord types there with all the different possible root notes. So that's a great little feature, that chord tutor. But it just brings me to one final point. As clever as these instruments are, and these chord computer, if you want to call it that, that's in there, there are certain chords that can still confuse a keyboard if you're not careful. So I'm going to give you the prime example. I would think that quite a lot of you during your playing have come across a guy called Kenneth Baker. He did the Complete Organ Player originally, which then became the Complete Keyboard Player. in the complete organ player, the first chord you ever learnt was C6. And then you learnt a lot of sixth chords. Well, let me go C6. And when I first learnt C6, I learnt it as a C chord with an A in it. And I'm going to play that, and I'm going to do my check method. So I'll come back to the main screen. Oh, hang on. Doesn't say C6, it says A minor 7. Well, here's the problem. That chord is C6, but only if you put a C bass note on. Those same notes are also A minor 7. And here's how modern keyboards look at these chords. You play your 4 notes. It first of all looks at the lowest note you've played, which in this case is a G. It cannot find any chord configuration to do with G based on those notes. So it then moves to the next note up, and it says, hang on, next note up is an A. Oh yeah, those 4 notes make up an A minor 7. So that's what we're going to say you're playing. Most importantly, it puts an A bass with it. So how would I get those 4 notes to become a C6? Well, following that little rule I told you about how the keyboard works it out, you need to invert the chord, or play the notes in a different order, that's all that means, is so that the C is at the bottom. I'm now playing the same 4 notes, but it actually says C6 now in the screen. Now, that may not seem a problem to you, but of course, if you're playing away and the chord says C6 and you play it in its standard position, of course, when you've got an auto bass running, that bass is going to be based on A, not C. So it's going to sound quite incorrect, to be quite honest. There's other chords like that to watch for, diminished chords. There's only actually 3 shapes of diminished chord. So the way it works out which diminished chord you want is by the lowest note or the root note that you give it. That aside, make use of that chord tutor. It's on menu 2 and it's there, and you input the root note and the configuration of chord you want, and it will show you in the picture the notes to play. Great little feature. So I thought what would be nice, just to conclude this little section where we've featured the Genos and some hints and tips on the Genos, would be to finish off with just a nice piece of music for you. And I'm doing this for 2 reasons. A, I thought it'd be nice to just feature the Genos just played in its out-of-the-box form, if you want to call it that. So there's no additional software loaded here. We're just using style and the sounds pre-given to us by the instrument. And also, I want to play something in an extremely simple way, because one of the things I want these monthly videos to get through to people is that you don't have to be this incredible player with fistful of notes, hands flying everywhere for things to sound nice. Actually, a big part of the battle is to make the instrument work for you. Now, how do you do that? You do that by getting to know your instrument and how it works. Then you can get the best. And then instead of you fighting the instrument is actually working for you. And basically the end result will be a heck of a lot better. It really is worth just getting to know what the features do on your instrument. Now, for this one, I'm using a style that comes from a sort of new type of style that's appeared in the last few years, and that's Yamaha call it, a lot of them, ethereal. What they are is just a lovely wall of orchestral or vocal sound in the background. They're not necessarily drum and bass and guitar based like a lot of the styles that we've come to know. So yes, they still follow a perfect timing pattern, but actually, you know, in reality, you can be slightly out of time with these styles and it doesn't show up anywhere near as much as when you're using like a swing rhythm, a ballad or a bossa nova that's very strong on drums and bass, etc. So ethereal just gives you this lovely ambient wall of sound in the background, and I'm using that. This particular one is called Ethereal Movie, so I chose the style. It gave me a tempo that wasn't appropriate for what I wanted, so using the tempo control, I've wound the tempo down to 72, and then all I've done is used our good friend we mentioned earlier, which is the one-touch setting link. Now this is a great feature because basically as you work through the style variations, it automatically links it with the 4 one-touch settings. So as we go through the style variations, therefore it automatically changes sound. And as you know, as you go from A to D in the style, not only does the style build up, but often the sound will increase in its fullness as well. So hope you enjoy this. A very, very simple, but I think effective performance of a lovely piece of music written by one of my favourite composers, John Barry, who has written some incredible film scores, of course most famously the James Bond themes, but he's written some other beautiful, beautiful music, and this is no exception. It's a little piece called Somewhere in Time, and funny enough it comes from a film called Somewhere in Time. Hope you enjoy it. So there you go, that's episode 4 done, and I really hope you've enjoyed the content we've had for you this month. Just before I leave you, a little bit about next month's episode. We're going to be a couple of weeks later, so maybe end of the first week, second week in October. And I'll tell you the reason why. I'm just delaying it just by a short period of time for you. I'm pleased to say that as a company, we're beginning now to reattend some of the keyboard festivals. And towards the end of September, we'll be off to sunny Norfolk, hopefully, to Pakefield, and we're taking part in the Keyboard Cavalcade Festival there. So we will have our Korg exhibition stand there, and we will be ably assisted for the 4 days by Korg UK. And very kindly, they've supplied us with Pete Shaw, the absolute master of the Korg PA4X, and Adam Whittle from Korg will be with us for the 4 days. So here's what I thought I'd do. I'll take the cameras, I'll take the microphones, and if you can't go to the festival, I'll bring a bit of the festival to you. I'll show you around the stand and do a little bit of filming, particularly when we do our little Korg School presentations with some more hints and tips for you. I thought we'd film a little bit of Pete's evening concert on the stage for you, and Pete Shaw will be doing one of his legendary late night sessions, and that's Pete at his best with his PA4X, his Korg Kronos, a nice, intimate, more relaxed gig. He'll be singing some songs as well. So what I'd like to do is compile a few little clips of the festival and bring those to you next time. So please bear in mind, it'll be a couple of weeks or so behind, but I hope you'll enjoy what we've got for you. So until we see you next time, look after yourselves, take care. Thanks for watching.